Hello everyone, in today's video I will be teaching you how to use the sine, cosine and tangent buttons properly with the TI-84 Plus, as well as how to use the sine inverse, cosine inverse, tangent inverse buttons, as well as other abilities, and how to use the pi button, for instance, in order to apply it to trigonometry with TI-84 Plus, as well as the how to differ the degree and radians with the TI-84, because that might get confusing in some questions. Now let's begin. First of all, as you know, just use pressing sine and 50 will give you an answer, which is much more efficient than using a phone calculator where you have to turn it and first you have to punch in the number and then write. Then you can't write a whole long equation like in TI-84. For instance, this is an example. Parentheses closed times cosine 60, parentheses closed. You can't just do this with the TI, I apologize, with the phone calculator. You have to do it with the TI because, as you can see, it shows you the whole way. It's much more efficient, and as I've mentioned before, and I will mention it again, the parentheses really make a difference, because just writing cosine 90 times cosine 60 will give a different answer, because it first calculates 90 times cosine 60 and then finds the cosine of that specific value. So be careful and be aware when doing that. Now, in order to use this inverse sine, you have to press the second inverse button and then punch in a value, for instance. Sometimes it does not work, of course, because you can't find the sine inverse of 90, because as you know, usually you use sine inverse in order to find an equation like sine x equals 40, for instance. What is x? You can't just find it with any kind of equation method. You have to use sine inverse. For instance, if it says sine x equals 0.9, then you press sine inverse 0.9, because it says, for instance, sine x equals 0.9. So if you want to find what x is, then you have to punch in sine inverse 0.9, which is 64, which means the x value is 64. That is why it's very important to actually know the difference between the inverses. The same goes with this cosine inverse, tangent inverse. Now, as you know, radians measure and degree measures are different. In order to distinguish them, you have to press the mode button. After mode, a page like this should come up. If you turn the degree mode into radian mode by coming on it with the arrows and then punching in enter and coming to radians, and then you can just press clear, you can find the radian values. For instance, sine pi, which is 0, because pi is 180, and as you know, sine 180 is 0. Like in degree measures, pi is 180 degrees, and that is what it gives you an answer. But for instance, if you write sine 180 with the radian measures, it will give you negative 0.80, which is wrong. It shouldn't be like that, because this isn't degrees, this is radians. Just the radian sine 180 is negative 0.801, but in degree measures it's different. So that is how you change the degrees into radian. It is very important to use these modes and be careful while using them. Now clear. This was all for today. Thank you all for listening. This is basically how to use the sine, cosine, and tangent, as well as the inverses of these buttons with this TI-84 Plus. And as I've mentioned before, differentiating between radians and degrees is very important, and most beginners don't know how to do it, and they have a lot of problems, and some even might have problems with their teachers because it takes a bit of a time for the teacher to recognize that that is the main problem. But in order to save time, it's a very good idea to actually watch this video and learn how to turn the degree mode into radian modes so that there aren't any problems, because in the default settings the TI-84 Plus is in radians. Thank you all for listening. Goodbye.